ready now?
Hey guys, in today's video I'm going to talk about this amazing book, Flying Fists, the definitive guide to Western martial arts and films of the 1970s. Author John Beckett. And it's interesting, what motivated him to write this book is he kind of figured somebody would eventually write the book, somebody else, and cover all these Western martial arts films. Now, Western martial arts films, of course, films made in America and films made in Europe. Not the Eastern martial arts films, not the Hong Kong films or anything like that, but he figured somebody would eventually write the book, and then I can explore and find out all about these films. And nobody ever did, but they motivated him to do it, which is kind of similar to some of the videos I do on this channel and why I even created it. We kind of had similar motivations. Somebody's got to do it. Somebody's got to put the info out there because there's an interest for it. And speaking of interest for it, this book is really amazing because, like many of you, I grew up in the 80s and 90s, so I'm very familiar with those martial arts films. But outside of like Enter the Dragon and a few others, I'm not that aware of the martial arts films of the 70s. So I'm glad he put this together. And it's very amusing. I'm gonna link it in the description below. You pick it up from Amazon or, just Google it and find out where you could pick it up. But it is highly recommended. And obviously any review is subjective. So I'm going to prove that it's a good book and that it's highly entertaining because I'm going to read a couple excerpts. So for example, I'll read.
You read? You read on the show?
Well, I don't know about the reading. We didn't discuss the reading.
What he says about some of these films, and there's so many of them. So this will just give you a small taste, but it'll be proof that you'll know this is a good book. More so than me just saying it is. Anyway, so the book actually begins with a very interesting history of the martial arts and how it found its way into cinema. It's interesting if you think about it because cinema was really the way most of us has gotten exposed to the martial arts. Take somebody like Don the Dragon Wilson, for example. Amazing, great kickboxing champion, even in the Guinness Book of World Records for like the amount of titles he has. But a lot of people, like myself, haven't really heard of him until they seen and were aware of his movies. And then, of course, they would market it as World Kickboxing Champion. And then you could look back at that later. Nowadays, very easily on YouTube. But back in the day, it's like hard to see his fights. It's not like they were just like on TV. Kickboxing was never that mainstream in America. Nothing like boxing was. But it was a different world back then where you were exposed and made aware of martial arts because of the movies. But ironically enough, they would have never even gotten that opportunity had they not been like martial arts champions. Like if Don the Dragon Wilson was never a kickboxing champion, obviously he would have never been in martial arts films. Nowadays, the films are a lot different where they want to just take an actor and then kind of teach him some martial arts and usually use a stuntman for a lot of the fight scenes. But this kind of breaks down the history of like how martial arts got into film and all that kind of things in the first section. The book really begins after the success of 1973's Enter the Dragon because that really kicked things off. And there were so many films that were made because of that. Really, this is a guide to just kind of like read through and then figure out, okay, which of these movies, these Western martial arts movies from the 1970s should I check out? This, like it says on the title, is the definitive guide. Even though this is a book devoted to the Western martial arts films, there's a section on Bolo Yeung, the Hong Kong films of Bolo Yeung. And just to kind of give you a little bit on Bolo, the author says, an odd choice of topic for a book about Western martial arts movies, I hear you say. Well, yes, agreed. Most Bolo Yeung films couldn't be more Asian if they featured a kung fu fighting panda eating rice on the Great Wall of China. But please hear me out. Quite simply, in the world of low-budget, straight-to-video American martial arts movies of the 80s and 90s, Bolo Yeung was a major player. As one of the definitive bad guys of the genre, and one of the few Asian martial arts actors to make the successful transition from East to West, Bolo rode the entire craze from its beginnings. As Yang Zi, he featured alongside Bruce Lee in Enter the Dragon, playing the villainous henchman Bolo, whose name he adopted throughout the remainder of his career. He played the main villain Chong Li in the Jean-Claude Van Damme phenomenon Bloodsport, of course. In short, Bolo Yeung is synonymous with the genre explored in this book, and as such, I feel a brief look at his 70s Hong Kong movies would be of value and help give a better understanding of this awesome character. That, and I just want to talk about Bolo's films, goddammit. So he writes about Chinese Hercules in 1973, a Hong Kong film. Fists of Justice, 1977 Hong Kong film. And then Enter the Game of Death, a 78 Hong Kong film. So, of course, when John writes about the definitive guide to the martial arts films of the 80s and 90s, we know we're going to get a lot more Bolo. I mean, there's so many Bolo young films I remember renting from the video store back in the day. But anyway, going through the book, let's just randomly pick out one of these review breakdowns. All right, here's one. Death Machines. Came out in June of 1976. Director Paul Curiazzi. Runtime of 1 hour and 3 minutes. That barely qualifies for a feature. It's a USA film. Tagline, the killers of the future are ready now. Also, a frightening glimpse into the future. Alright, so John writes, I'm not sure I can think of a film where the difference between what was presented in the marketing and what we got in the final product is so starkly different. By all accounts, with its tagline about futuristic killers and its poster depicting a steel pyramid reaching up into infinity, metal faces staring impassively into space while crushing screaming humans between its razor-like teeth, you might be inclined to think you're about to watch a dystopian sci-fi flick. You might even see the trailer, where robotic voice intones that you're about to be taken one step into the future where murder is no longer a crime, only a job.
Death Machines, one step into the future.
Before giving you the serial numbers for 3 beings whose programs are to destroy, kill, and eliminate, and you may think you're about to see killer cyborgs going on a rampage. What I'm sure you won't be expecting is a film set in the 1970s America about 3 mute, bulletproof martial arts experts killing off hitmen so their weirdo mistress can have a monopoly in the killers for hire industry. I don't really know where to start with this one. It's one of the strangest films I've ever seen yet, and gives a strong impression that drugs may have been smoked while concocting the plot. Well, it was the 70s. We first meet the 3 ethnically diverse death machines fighting in an oriental garden, overseen by huge-wigged Japanese wannabe crime lord Madam Lee, played by Mary Hanjo. There's Black Death Magic, Joshua Jackson, Asian Death Machine, Michael Chong, and White Death Machine, karate champion Ron Marchini, much more appealing here than in Murder in the Orient, most probably due to being mute this time around. And that's pretty much all the characterization these guys get. They may be death machines, but they sure ain't... They may be death machines, but they sure ain't depth machines. The only other thing we learn about them is that they've been given a drug to make them mindless, bulletproof killing machines, and that, according to Madam Lee's shadowy, faceless boss, whom we briefly meet at the start, will form the nucleus of the deadliest group of assassins the world has ever seen. Incidentally, these scenes of the nameless mastermind were added to the film later to give it more of a sci-fi feel in accordance with the general thrust of the advertising. Before the death machines are ready to go out into the world, however, one more test is needed. They have to kill some other top hitmen who have been hired by crime boss Mr. Giolotti and show them that they're the numero uno assassins on the block, and then take out the hitmen's intended targets, Ho Lung, a martial arts teacher, played by Eric Lee, and Nathan Adams, a banker. The action scenes come pretty thick and fast from here on, as the death machines prove themselves the least subtle hitmen in human history as they take out their rivals in a variety of flagrant and inventive ways. Throwing one off a roof. Sounds like some of the Kumite fights Frank Dukes talked about.
I mean, James, my gosh, James used to throw guys off the roof. Dude, he used to have matches in San Francisco.
Bazooka blasting one in broad daylight, flattening one with a steamroller as he chats in a phone booth, and driving a truck through an Italian restaurant so they can chop a guy's head off and pop it in a basket. Once presented with this delightful gift, Mr. Giolotti decides it's probably better for his health to start using Madame Lee for his future assassination needs. The next bit is probably the martial arts highlight of the film, as the 3 death machines crash through the window of Ho Lung's dojo and, showing their usual level of subtlety, proceed to grab swords from the walls and slaughter everything in sight. It's a lengthy and brutal scene and showcases some pretty good abilities from all involved, particularly the death machines. Unfortunately, though, they make the mistake of leaving a survivor, Son's hand. There's also a story related to that with Frank Dukes and somebody with a katana and getting their hand cut off. It's crazy. It's part of the Frank Dukes interview I did that I'll still release, and it's also something somebody who knew Frank back in the day, told me. And it's like, oh yeah, I remember you told me that. I asked Frank about it, and yeah, there's like police reports and other craziness, but there's a lot of truth to Frank, despite what you may think, man. Because if somebody just told you that story, you'd probably be like, no, I'm not buying it. It's like, no, that one's true, and I'm sure many others are too. But anyway, continuing onto this, enter one of the worst movie protagonists of all time, Frank Thomas, played by John Lowe. All this wimp does is whine and moan constantly about his missing hand and general lot in life. What a victim, man. He can talk the talk, sure enough, telling investigating cop Lieutenant Forrester, "I'll never forget their faces. If you don't find them, I will. If I find them first, I'll send them to you in pieces." Big talk for a one-handed wimp in a hospital bed, and unfortunately far too much of the film from here on is taken up by this wet blanket. His relationship with his boring, unappealing girlfriend and his general woe-is-me attitude. Sure, you've lost your hand, but get a grip, man. Okay, bad choice of words, but seriously, dude, you're supposed to be the hero of a martial arts film. Don't just lie there and moan to all the sundry. Take a leaf out of Secret Ahmet's book from Sia Eldavingli Adam, 1974, and make yourself a metal chopping hand or something. Yeah, you could be like, even Edward Scissorhands, he should put like scissors on there. I'm sure he could kill those assassin dudes, man, with scissors. But anyway.
I'd like to have shoehorn hands.
Oh, that's a great choice, isn't it? A useless decoration or something that turns me into a freak show?
Luckily, the death machines show up with regularity to help us forget about this twerp. And I can't help feel, but James Cameron must have taken some inspiration from this film when he made The Terminator in its first sequel, as there are definite parallels to be had. The three death machines busting into the hospital to get Frank, the only witness to their murders, reminded me of a low-rent martial arts version of the police station scene in The Terminator. That was an amazing scene.
I'll be back.
And the single-minded, relentless focus with which they pursue Frank draws other obvious similarities. If you need more convincing, check out the way White Death Machine recoils theatrically and gets back up repeatedly when shot, and tell me it doesn't make you instantly think of Robert Patrick's T-1000 in Terminator 2. Oh man, we might be on you, James Cameron. Maybe James Cameron's like Quentin Tarantino, just ripping off all these movies. Speaking of White Death Machine, he's clearly the leader of the trio. In M. Ray Lott's book, The American Martial Arts Film, he gives his view that this is due to the racial undertones of the time and the white man's natural presumption to be leader of the other races. But really, with respect, I think this is grade A baloney. It's more likely to be the simple case that Ron Marchini was the most high-profile fighter in the film, having been ranked the top karate fighter in the U.S. in 1969, plus he was the producer. Yeah, I mean, that probably makes a lot more sense, right? Everybody's trying to find these, like, undertones that you know, oh, this is... I'm not going to get into that. Plus, he was the producer. Yeah, I mean, sure, that's probably way more likely why, right? Anyway, either way, he certainly gets the most fight scenes and is used to much better effect here than in Murder in the Orient. As well as a fight against a gang of bikers, another similarity to Terminator 2, he has a great extended fight scene in a police station when he's brought in, subdued with his hands cuffed behind his back, and ends up shooting several cops dead, wrecking the place using his karate skills to cut a swath through the hapless officers and escaping in a cop car after doing a nice spinning heel kick through the driver's window. It's an exciting and brutal scene, like a martial arts version of Rambo's police station escape scene in First Blood. Though Black and Asian death machines have less to do, they too show themselves to be formidable fighters, with Michael Chong doling out some nice capoeira-style roundhouse kicks during the biker brawl. Sadly, towards the end of the film, the interest wanes as the three killers take a backseat to Wimpy Frank. He mopes around with the same irritating hangdog expression, engages in disappointing sex with his whiny nurse girlfriend, and gets into a random fight at a bar, getting knocked unconscious by an old man and leaving us wondering how the hell he intends to tear the death machines to pieces if he can't even handle an irate pensioner.
Le who? The her.
Sadly, this conundrum is never solved as we don't get a final martial arts showdown of any sort, just Frank following the bad guys in his car, snooping around in some bushes, and getting his girlfriend to ring the police. Lame. Probably the wisest course of action in the real world, but one which has no place in a martial arts film. Very true. The hero needs to kick ass using martial arts in a martial arts film. I mean, come on. The storyline of Death Machines doesn't really make much sense and could probably best be described as a series of random events. The plus side of this is that you never really know what's going to happen next. The negative, of course, being that it's all pretty incoherent. If you want to take it even further down to its bare essentials, the whole film's just a series of rooms getting trashed in increasingly spectacular ways. A restaurant, a dojo, a hospital, a police station, a cafe, a bar, an office, all get trashed. Which is fine with me, especially if you throw martial arts into the mix. I'm pretty easily pleased, really. You can't really talk about Death Machines, though, without talking about the weird random shit that happens. You could fill a book with them. And I took a few notes here and there to give you a taster. Number 1, I have to mention Madam Lee. The fact she's got a Chinese name but is Japanese is only the beginning. For some reason, every time we see her, she's wearing an increasingly larger wig, and to quote Rob Hill in his book, The Bad Movie Bible, grimaces and mumbles her way through her lines as if she's mid-stroke. On top of that, at the end, she suddenly decides she wants the death machines killed. so sends her henchman up to their room with a gun. Yes, she sends him up to kill her bulletproof death machines with a gun. R.I.P. henchman. Number 2, these are some weird-ass assassins. Not only do they use steamrollers, samurai swords, and rocket launchers to dispatch their victims, but they deliver red Buddha statues as those they're about to off. A nice personal touch, yes, but the cops might start asking questions once a few of these show up at various sites of mass murders in the city. Though if the trailer's right, and the murder is no longer a crime, just a job, then maybe that's not an issue. Although if that's the case, why are the cops after them? I'm confused. Yeah, me too. Number 3, Lieutenant Forrester's boss has a green face. Not only that, but he's called Captain Green. I shit you not. I was confused at first and put it down as some weird in the near future people randomly paint their faces green thing. But it turns out it was entirely unintentional. With the makeup the actor was wearing turning green under the hot studio lights.
Jesus Christ.
Geez, don't do retakes or anything, Mr. Director. Just leave the poor bastard making his one and only film appearance with a green face. Why don't you? Number 4. If you're wondering what happened to Nathan Adams, the banker, come on, you know you were. Well, first, the death machines kidnap and rape his daughter, so Madam Lee's henchmen can show her dad photos of the incident and blackmail him so he quits his job at the bank. Unfortunately, he doesn't seem that bothered about his daughter and refuses. Boy, you gotta respect his dedication to the job, I guess. You could call this a bad life decision, as he instead ends up handcuffed to a filing cabinet while a time bomb, shaped like a big red Buddha of course, ticks away in his office. It's actually a pretty good scene, lengthy and very tense, and his secretary rushes to find the keys to his office while he screams and panics. It has literally no bearing on the plot whatsoever, but it's a good scene. So that's Death Machines in a nutshell. It starts off with relentless action, tails off at the end, has one of the worst protagonists of all time, some memorable villains, and is really the archetypal so bad it's good movie. Apart from the oddity that is Mary Honjo, who played Madam Lee, the acting mid-stroke person, everyone else gives a decent performance, and it was good to see Ron Marchini given a chance to show his karate skills. I take everything back I said about his abilities in my Murder in the Orient review, which obviously would be earlier in this book, and I'll chalk that one up to bad choreography. The story doesn't make any sense whatsoever, but it's fun, entertaining, and different, and another example of the variety that was to be found in 70s martial arts films. Some little factoids now. Number 1. Eric Lee was originally meant to feature as Asian Death Machine, but had to drop out as he was filming a role in the Sam Peckinpah film The Killer Elite. As a result, he was only able to feature in the small role of Ho Lung, known as the King of Kata. He won over 100 titles in kata competitions and is an inductee of the Black Belt Hall of Fame. This was his first film appearance, and he would go on to feature in Big Trouble in Little China, as well as alongside such stars as Don the Dragon Wilson, Billy Blanks, and Cynthia Rothrock. Number 2, Ron Marchini wouldn't feature in another film until 1983, 7 years later, beginning a slew of obscure straight-to-video outings, often in the Vietnam or post-apocalyptic genre. Number 3, the director, Paul Curiazzi, reassembled many of the cast and crew for his next film, Weapons of Death, 1981, including Joshua Jackson and Eric Lee, who was the main star. Curiazzi also wrote the book How to Live the James Bond Lifestyle in 2014, a self-help guide on how to reinvent yourself, become rich and successful, and get all the women by modeling yourself on 007. Anyway, like, who's ever heard of that movie, man? And such a detailed breakdown of it. Like, I don't know about you guys, I almost have to check that one out. But there's so many gems in here, so many amazing breakdowns and reviews, and it's just a guide to take you through the zaniness of the 70s. And along this guide, you're starting to find different like pit stops you want to take. It's like, ooh, I got to check this movie out. And then, you know, maybe read about 5 or 10 more. And then there's one that's really intriguing. It's like, ooh, I got to check this one out. So I'll probably cover more of these in the future every once in a while, just like randomly. Oh, let's talk about this film, for example. TNT Jackson came out June 8th, 1974. Well, you know, you guys need the book to read about that, but every once in a while on this channel, I'll remind you of this book because it's pretty damn entertaining, and some of these movies I'll even probably do a full video on. Anyway, let me know in the comments section, what's your favorite 70s martial arts film? Make sure to check out this book, by the way, because you may not have even discovered it yet.